This is Recruiting Roundtable, where we talk to HR and talent acquisition leaders about thoughtful topics in the world of recruiting. For today's discussion, we're going to be talking about social media and recruiting, and we're going to be looking at this from two different lenses. One is from a company perspective. How do companies leverage social media to build their brand and attract talent? And also from the candidate perspective, how candidates can use social media platforms to their advantage when looking for new opportunities and applying for jobs. We have just a fully loaded panel, amazing panel this week. Joining us are Megan Akers, Senior Director of Recruiting at Imply. We have Shreyas Paravastu, Head of People and Talent at Series, and Cameron Canny, Head of Talent at Hivewatch. Hey everyone, Megan, Shreyas, Cameron.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining.
Hello.
All right, so as we always do, let's start with a few intros. Please briefly discuss your role and just a short intro of your company. We'll start with Megan.
Sure. So I'm the, excuse me, mic check 1, 2. I'm the Senior Director of Recruiting at Imply Data. We do real-time analytics. I lead a team of 6 right now, and I got into recruiting. I actually started off my career doing project management and graphic design, and found that I love helping people. And so that's my quick 2 cents.
That's great. Thank you, Megan. Shreyas?
Hi, I'm Shreyas, and I'm the head of people and talent at Series, and we are building an all-in-one back office suite for all things, payments, billing, payroll, HR, that most businesses need. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Shreyas. And last but not least, Cameron.
Hi there. My name is Cameron Connie, Head of Talent Acquisition at Hivewatch. We're physical security SaaS software that helps to keep people safe. And so, I'm really excited about the opportunity to speak about this important topic.
Great. Thank you, Cameron. And lastly, my name is Sean Huynh. I'm Managing Director at Rocket. We've built an AI-powered tool that enables our recruiters to engage 5 times as many candidates in half the time and source really complex job requirements using highly granular filters. We're a trusted partner for over 500 high-growth companies, with 68% of our candidates being accepted for clients for first interview. All right, so let's start kind of like on the journey, right? We've talked to all of you about how you got into kind of the recruiting space. I'd love to just hear a little bit about just a little bit of the start of your journey, how you got into talent acquisition, and kind of what motivates you in this field. Maybe we'll go back to Megan to start. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah. So thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. I feel like I'm on an episode of Hot Ones without the wings. So I started off my career, as I mentioned, doing technical project management and graphic design. And this was back when we had Brew devices before the iPhone with the snake game. I'm not sure if the audience will know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
But if not, please Google it. It's a lot of fun. And I quickly found that what I loved the most was helping people. Helping people find jobs, helping people find that perfect candidate for their team, helping people understand what they truly needed out of an employee. And that's how I landed my career in recruiting. Started off an agency and quickly moved in-house and was able to build relationships and partners and grow from there.
Love it. Love helping people. It's really, this is a people business, right? So that's what we're here to do. What about you, Shreyas? How did you get your start in recruiting?
Yeah, recruiting found me. I always say that. I kind of stumbled upon it. I actually was on a different track before. I had done my master's in counseling psychology. And so I was on the route to potentially pursuing a PhD, decided not to. And a friend told me at that point, hey, do you want to come to San Francisco and maybe recruit? It's like, what is that? And the rest is history. And so like you, Megan, I also started on the agency side, worked my way in-house. And for the last several years have really been focused on joining as like an earlier first member of the talent team and building things from the ground up, which is what I enjoy. So yeah, 3 times.
3-time first member. Come on.
3-time first time member. But yeah, what I really enjoy about recruiting and the whole people aspect is kind of what you were saying too, Megan, but really helping find those connections and then helping a company grow sustainably, watch people thrive in their careers and kind of see, be grateful that maybe I was a little part, I played a little part in their journey. And so it's really exciting to just watch people grow overall.
Mhm. It's funny. I used to ask. I ran a recruiting agency before joining Rocket, and at our team meetings, like annual team meetings, we always ask people to write, "Hey, like, what did you want to be when you grow up?" and write it on a piece of paper. And I would always make a guess. Like, no one said recruiter, and I was always right. So another person who also kind of fell into recruiting is Cameron. Cameron, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, exactly. I fell into it by accident, but it's the best thing that could have ever happened. And so I started my journey as a healthcare recruiter and then eventually transitioned into technical recruiting and then finally TA leadership. And so throughout my career, I've worked for smaller tech startups like HiveWatch and more name brand companies like Snap and Verizon. And one of the main motivators for me in TA has been the opportunity to help both people and companies grow and how I
Mhm.
can contribute to that growth. So for example, I joined HiveWatch as employee number 10. Since then, I've helped us grow to 60 employees, utilizing the skills I've learned throughout my career. I'm excited for all the things we've accomplished as a company so far for our size and the fact that it isn't just me shouting the importance of recruiting, but that everyone throughout the company, especially the CEO and hiring managers and teams, care tremendously about that as well. And that's helped us to build a fantastic product with great people.
I'm gonna stay with you, Cameron, because I think everyone here has great startup experience. So I want to just dig right into that. Um, how has your role evolved as a talent acquisition leader within the startup ecosystem? Have you seen that change over the last few years?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's changed a lot. And I think the main thing that's changed has been, you focus more on operations and analytics and you have to do more with less. So, whereas, my strength originally was just straight up recruiting, I had to get better at those two facets where I had people dedicated to that previously. And I'm also a team of one. So, also before COVID, we had a different strategy as far as location of interviews where a lot of our interviews, if not most, were on site. And now it's shifted to, mostly remote. And then sometimes if you get a candidate to final stages and they're local, you can bring them on site. And so, I think before that, before COVID, you had to, kind of be able to provide an experience on site where now you had to shift it to more of a remote experience. And so, I think at HiveWatch we've been able to shift our strategy, and we've gone to more local, and luckily in LA we are just blessed to have a lot of talented folks in the area, and so hiring has been a little bit less challenging than other parts of the U.S. might be.
hmm And Sharias, I know that we mentioned you being, 3 times founding member of a kind of a talent team within a startup. How have you seen that role evolve from maybe the first time you were, the first talent acquisition person to now still, I think, still being a team of one, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, still a team of one. Yeah, I mean, I think that the way I've seen the TA space evolve is at the early part of my career, the early part of my startup journey, the recruiting function was almost, it felt a little bit, at least at that point, we're kind of on an island, right? We're sort of operating, we're filling roles, right? And that's kind of what we're doing. But I think like as the field has grown, as companies have grown, like I think we're starting to notice the importance of like, hey, there's really a strong partnership, right? Like between recruiting, between the rest of the organization, right? Being front and center almost, right? Product is important, but people are really important. So, and that's where recruiting is, I think, has had to come up on the analytics front, right? I think before it was a lot more on, how do you feel about something, right? And it's like now you have to quantify that. And so I think that's great because I think that change is going to bring forth important changes in programs and the way that you operate across the company, right? Versus just like a gut feeling. So I think those are the ways that I've seen it really evolve. And, and now I think it's a lot more focused on, as you were saying, like Cameron, just like the operations front, but then also the analytics piece and are we really driving the changes that we're seeing in order to take the company forward?
Right. Um, Megan, so you've been at Imply for almost 3 years.
Yeah, I'm celebrating my 3-year anniversary March 1st. I'm very
Oh,
excited.
congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats. That's great. 3 years in tech is like, I don't know what
A
equivalent.
century, really.
There you go. So in the 3 years, let's talk about just Imply. Have you seen your role evolve?
Yeah, I would say I've seen it evolve significantly. When I think about what's changed within the past 3 years, I think about what actually hasn't changed, right? We've gone through a global pandemic. We've gone through everybody working remotely. And now all of a sudden companies want to bring everybody on site. And that impacts the people significantly, and we're in the people business.
Mm-hmm. So we're here to talk about social media, and I think Imply does it really well from what I've
Thank
seen.
you.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I know you have a very vibrant developer community. I think you have a podcast as well. Talk to me a little bit about some of the things Imply is doing as an organization from a social media perspective that's helping you in particular on the recruiting front.
Yeah, we're doing quite a bit from a social media perspective, and shout out to Ben on our marketing team, who has been shouldering quite the responsibility, and Rena as well, hosting the podcasts. We've been doing podcasts. We have a robust developer community team, but not only that, we try to up level our employer brand as often as we can. And that could be through posting culture award winners that we do on a quarterly basis externally, and interview them in regards to why they like working at Imply and what they think makes someone successful at Imply. And I think having an audience internally speaking to their experience for external candidates makes a significant impact.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, I think that culture piece super important. Cameron, I know at HiveWatch you're doing a number of social media kind of things. I know you mentioned that you do like an employee of the month as well, that you kind of promote on social media. What's HiveWatch doing from a social media perspective that's helping you attract talent?
Yeah, so yeah, we have that Bees Knees monthly Employee of the Month program, and so been pretty cool. We're HiveWatch, we like to call all of our employees bees, and just a nice play on words. But yeah, looking back, I think social media has definitely revolutionized recruiting, and it's allowed us to have just a much broader reach when it comes to job postings and real time interactions between recruiters and candidates. I mean, when I first started at the company, we didn't have a website, we didn't have a career page, we had nothing, and so had to really build it from the ground up. And so, now thinking about the evolution of LinkedIn, went from being purely stiff and professional to now being a place where you can, grow a strong network with people you've actually sometimes never met before, and companies, sharing more information now than ever. And so, we recently awarded built-in LA's best places to work. And so, I think, you never hear about brand building at a personal or professional level until now. And so we've seen that impact of social media at HiveWatch. And before social media, we wouldn't have necessarily known the impacts we're driving in real time or what our candidates respond best to. We've had a lot of success leveraging Instagram actually to share our hot jobs and some of those awards, and increasing our application rates, specifically our click to apply rates.
So I was curious because Megan, definitely shouted out her marketing person, and you seem like you're very involved in the social media front. Is it marketing driving that, or is your team, yourself, really heavily involved in it as well?
I think the marketing team is who we rely on and who we lean on. And we have an exceptional marketing team at HiveWatch, Sarah Schoenfeld and Jenna Hardy, who really, just have their finger on the pulse of, what's new as far as trends. And sometimes, we're changing things. We'll try something out and then change it. And, I think being able to, sometimes do the LinkedIn ad drivers to kind of, push candidates to apply has been very helpful, when we were first starting out to build our brand. And I think brand building is not something that one recruiter or one recruiting team or even one marketing team can do. And it's not only just those two teams. I think, people in the company being able to share, comment, really helps to, increase the amount of people that are seeing these posts and getting it into the right hands.
I'm really interested. I want to come back to that on putting out ads to get people to apply. Maybe you should talk to Megan. I think she rejected 54,000 candidates last year, so I don't think she has that problem. I want to go to Shreyas. Shreyas, I know when we're talking prior to the show, you have some really interesting thoughts on from the candidate perspective using social media, right? So I'd love to get your feedback on how are you seeing, so you're a team of one, so you're recruiting, you're sourcing, and there's candidates out there that either they have their LinkedIn profile, or they might send you like a portfolio website. What are some of the things that you're seeing from the candidate side that it's really interesting or maybe different, or it stands out to you when you're reviewing candidates for your roles?
Yeah, I think especially with LinkedIn or portfolio, I mean, that's really like your brand, right? And that's what you're putting out there to the world. And I think that, really being concise about, your key achievements, right? Maybe where you joined, how it was, when you left, how it was, like the state of sort of progression, right? And giving people those sort of key unique differentiators that they can kind of take back to their team, right? And so I think when you're building your own portfolio or LinkedIn profile, really being cognizant of, kind of what makes you sort of really unique, right? Everybody has those things, or everybody has the things that make them really unique. And so really encouraging people to continue to put that out there. I read cover letters. I know I mentioned that to you. Maybe that's not social media, but I actually do read cover letters. I've seen some really, fun, humorous ones, and just things that kind of, I know people have put thought into it, right? And I think it doesn't take a lot of time and energy to just bring a little bit of sort of your spin on it, right? It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be like very robotic sounding, right? Like, I think don't be afraid to make it your own, is kind of my take on things, because I do look at those things, if you provide it. And so, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Megan, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, like I mentioned, I think you have a hard time attracting candidates. So how do candidates, like, look, you rejected 54,000 candidates last year. It's a lot of candidates.
54,311 candidates were rejected in 2023.
There you go, the exact number. So of the ones that didn't get rejected, what are, like, and just focusing on a social media lens, not just like their resume, but just from a social media aspect, are there certain things that would make a candidate stand out above the rest that got rejected?
Yeah, absolutely. A passion and interest for Imply. We're a very niche tool, and sometimes it can be hard to be passionate about certain technological aspects. But the more a candidate does research in regards to the company, the blogs, things that we post externally for people to read, the better. The more engagement from the hiring managers, the more engagement from the recruiting team, and the greater team doing the interview process.
Yeah, and so do you, like, because sometimes you see people like they'll really engage with content. Is it just coming into an interview with like some background, like, hey, I read your blog post, or I understand the company thinks about this problem in this way, or is it like engaging with social media? Like, when you talk about kind of engaging with the content, or consuming it, how do you evaluate that from a candidate perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily, it's a part of the valuation process, because we're looking at core skills, but we're also looking at culture add, right? And we say culture add instead of culture fit because everybody brings something different. And we're not looking to have a homogenous culture, which is not healthy for the business. And so when we think about someone's level of interest and engagement with our social media posts, it matters. It matters to us that they care deeply about the problems that we're encountering, and hopefully they're able to provide solutions.
Yeah. Cameron, you're in the security space, and it's we're talking about this because like you have a platform that connects to like physical security cameras. And I was like, well, what kind of security company are you? You're like, well, we're just a security company. Right? How important is it for you from a candidate perspective to have that kind of interest and passion in security when you're interviewing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you really always want to be able to have a passion for keeping people safe, which is important. But I think we tend to hire folks that don't necessarily come from the security industry. They may not come from physical security or even cybersecurity, but we can teach you those keywords and those buzzwords. I think the things that we can't teach you are your specific skill set. And so things like Kubernetes or Terraform. Of course, it would be great if you come in, with that experience. And I think, some of those, pieces are tough to teach on the fly, especially when you're an early stage, fast growing company. So I think just having the passion for, just like wanting to help people, I think is important, and keeping people safe, rather than saying, well, I love security. Sure, that's great too. And I think that can also be another, avenue of getting into the company. I think, just showing some sort of interest in that. And I think, who doesn't want to keep people safe? Who doesn't want to keep themselves and their families and friends safe? So I think it's a really easy mission to get behind. But you can also sometimes, see through that, and really, wanting to make sure that someone has a genuine interest rather than just forcing it as well.
Okay, I got to ask this question because that's a great point. I'm going to go Shreyas on this one. How do you assess if a candidate's actually really interested? Because, like, to be honest, I'm in the recruiting world, so I talk to candidates, and I just know sometimes they're applying to more than one job.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, but it's happening. And they gotta at least show that they're somewhat interested, right? Like, what are some of like the little, what does your spidey sense tell you that if this person's really genuinely interested, or they're just saying they're interested for the interview?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is, just focused on like how genuine is this, like, interest in conversation, right? Like just from the depth of maybe the knowledge that they've gone into, right? And because is it just that you're using keywords and buzzwords that were sort of, you can find anywhere, or is it, they've done some digging around, there's some extra curiosity and tinkering, maybe they uncovered like I don't know, blog post from like 4 years ago, or just like that sort of intellectual curiosity, I think that comes through in the conversations versus just, oh, I know that I don't know, your values are this, X, Y, and Z, which is great. But it's like, okay, do you have thoughts around that, right? Like, do you have
Mhm.
certain, is there certain feelings around that, right? Like, how do you feel about X, Y, and Z, blog post? Or is there something that maybe sparked your curiosity, or maybe you don't agree with something, right? So I think that sort of genuine conversation is what really gets me to sort of believe that, okay, like you've thought about this, right? And like
Mhm.
also that you're maybe even not agreeing with everything, like that's okay, right? Because we all have to have different opinions and kind of grow. So I think those are some of the signals that I look for, is sort of like the depth of where that goes, like that conversation.
Mhm. And Megan, with Imply being a very technical product, how do you suss out kind of that genuine interest?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think because we're a larger company at about 230 employees, we're now starting to get a little bit more segmented. So it's not about the overall passion per se, but it's about the passion in regards to the position, how it can have an impact on business objectives. And
Mm.
so we're starting to silo and take a look at that passion in different ways based on the team and the position.
Mm. Interesting. I'm gonna stay with you, Megan, on this one. So let's look at, like, in terms of social media platforms. Are there certain social media platforms that are more effective for reaching potential candidates that you've seen? Like, for example, like LinkedIn versus another platform, or other platforms out there?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think what's important to us is keeping a separation from professionalism and personal social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook.
Hmm.
For us, we have a tendency to focus on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's where we get our highest engagement and where we're able to see the highest ROI.
Okay, great. And Cameron, what are your thoughts on the different platforms?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with that. And I think, obviously LinkedIn has cornered the market and they're the primary platform for professional recruiting and networking. But I think, utilizing something like meetup.com, nobody really talks about Meetup anymore.
Mm.
Going to meetups, maybe even going to virtual meetups. I think that's been, tremendous throughout my career, being able to not only host meetups, but to attend local ones and find local talent. So I think, obviously, yeah, LinkedIn is the main name of the game. But I think additionally, as Megan mentioned, Twitter is a really important piece. And additionally, we've been able to, kind of show our culture not only through those avenues, but also YouTube and even TikTok, more of that short form video,
Hmm.
being able to showcase, maybe a day in the life as an employee. And also sharing some of the, social aspects. Sometimes we'll do, a little celebration, someone's birthday, or someone's anniversary that's been at the company for a while, and doing those little things, I think makes a big difference. And candidates notice that. They'll see it on your life page on LinkedIn. They'll see it on, all of your company content. But I think being able to showcase a lot of that, kind of shows that it's not just a job, it's not just a role, it's more than that. And we care more about the employee. We care about the person.
Hmm. Hmm. In terms of from a sourcing perspective, let's go Shreyas on this one, because I know you're doing a lot of sourcing. There's obviously LinkedIn. People are developers are on Stack Overflow, developers are on GitHub. I'm talking mostly developers right now because I think most the folks in here are recruiting developers. Other than LinkedIn, have you kind of toyed around or tried to engage candidates in some of these other areas where they live?
Yeah, I think that we've had success with like Slack communities, like different like kind of sub Slack communities, right? I think we had developers in the past like post on like some like sub threads, basically. I think within, I forgot the platform, but it was like one of these like just kind of a developer focused sort of community.
Hmm.
Conferences, like small conferences, we've had some success with. But also recently, I've been introduced to something else called Silo, which is kind of an up and coming sort of referral based sort of program, where I think they're trying to differentiate from LinkedIn, which I think tends to have a lot of noise. And when I used to work at climate tech previously, really like organizing and working with kind of climate based and like local communities and trying to kind of find people who have that like shared interests, I find that like have actually yielded results.
Interesting. Anyone else here tried Silo? It's the first I've heard of it.
No,
I'll have to check it out.
I got to check it out. Yeah.
Megan, what are your thoughts? Do you have any other platforms outside of LinkedIn that you're using to engage candidates?
Yeah, I think from a sourcing perspective, other platforms are ever evolving and changing. I think just taking a look at how AngelList all of a sudden became well found, and how GitHub, how you used to be able to search for particular developer skill sets, now they've essentially boxed out recruiters, right? And so adjusting and conforming to those platforms and how they're evolving is really complex. But otherwise, I'm a big fan of atypical searching techniques like Google Boolean searches, which is one of my favorites.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, you have a lot of really interesting results. I think for job seekers specifically, you can actually find job postings that aren't necessarily posted on LinkedIn because companies are getting, 54,311 applicants. So how can you differentiate yourself from the crowd?
That's really interesting. So you put like a Boolean search into Google and then you can find candidates or find like jobs?
Or find research papers, or you can find a whole host of things with Google, as an index website site.
I'm gonna have to ask you for a tutorial of this later. It sounds pretty cool. I totally lost. Cameron, did we talk to you about this? The different platforms? Sorry. I don't think if we did. Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about candidates leveraging social media. All right. So I'm gonna go to you, Cameron, on this one. So there's a lot of discussion, like, I'll see like the post on LinkedIn or someone giving me like, oh, I got a job. This is like my 6 steps to getting the job. And a lot of times it's like, I pinged the hiring manager or I reached out to the recruiter. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that that's like something that's helpful, that's necessary? Do you think it's something that may potentially hurt the candidate? Like, what are your thoughts on candidates reaching out to the recruiter or hiring managers directly about a job they just applied for?
Yeah, you got to be really careful as a candidate. I think, a main thing is, all right, you see a jobs posted, you got to see who do you know at the company, or who are your maybe secondary connections there. And, sometimes you don't want to go in cold and message someone and say, hey, I'm Cameron, I'm looking for a job. You want to be really specific about, hey, I'm Cameron, I saw this technical recruiting role that I'd be a great match for. I have this much years of experience in recruiting, and this looks like a more technical role, and I've been hiring software engineers. So you have to be really I think focused on what you do, and you only have a few sentences to get their attention at most. So I think being able to find those warmer leads is better than just going cold. But I think don't just apply to roles and not follow up with people. I think if you want to apply this to a role, sometimes you reach out and say, hey, I want to apply to this role. I see 1,000 people have applied to it. What's the best way my resume can get in the hands of the hiring manager? Even maybe even setting up 15 minutes to talk via Zoom, or even having a coffee with someone at the company you might know is huge when it comes to being able to navigate that process, rather than just blindly applying and hoping for the best. And I think the worst strategy you can do is just apply to all these jobs, sometimes auto apply and just hope for the best, because that's going to just be a situation where you apply to thousands of jobs. And I've seen people post about this, that they applied to 1,000+ jobs and they didn't get one interview. Sometimes it's a case where maybe you have to change your strategy and have a more thoughtful approach, and you apply to 10 jobs, but really make it where you've like honed in on, okay, I know the role, I know the team, I know like one person on this team, but maybe they can tell me more about the other team. And I think that's a much better approach.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great point. Shreyas, what do you think? It's so easy to, DM people now, get it, message them, engage with their content. What are your thoughts on, from a candidate perspective and using social media to help get in front of the right people?
Yeah, I mean, +1 to everything Cameron was saying. But the other thing that I like to do as well, and it takes more time, especially when I was last job searching, is especially I think when you're applying to a small company, right? And I think if you go in, try to get a feel for the org chart, right? And try to get a feel for the types of people that are in seat, maybe the stage of company they're at, potentially some of the problems and challenges that might be ahead, right? And then when you write to somebody either about a job, or maybe the job doesn't exist anymore, because that also happens, right? You kind of create a job for yourself. And I've actually had the experience of going through that. Is you reach out and you're like, okay, like here are my sort of, skill sets and backgrounds, and, whether it's in scale, whether it's, whatever. And here's maybe a problem that you might be thinking about. Like, maybe I can help you solve it. Right. So I think that, like, there's a proactive way that you can go about it as well, that I think maybe is underutilized, versus just like, there's a job and I'm applying.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think like at a smaller company, it might be easy. Like, you might be only one person in talent acquisition, so you can reach out to Shreyas. Sorry if your inbox gets flooded, hopefully with good candidates. But in a company that's, 200 plus people, 50,000, 50,000, 60,000 applications, Megan, and, you may not know who the hiring manager is. Like, how do you figure this out, right? Without like just blindly messaging random people with irrelevant, content or information.
Yeah, we're dealing with some pretty big numbers here. So you have to differentiate yourself from the crowd. You have to figure out ways to stand out from the crowd. I have one particular hiring manager that loves it when candidates reach out directly to him. He feels like that indicates proactiveness, intense interest for the position. And he has a tendency to put those people in the process before others. And so and that's particularly on our sales side, right? Because it's dependent upon the position. And I don't want to speak to engineering per se. If a hiring manager is getting inundated by over 150 engineering resumes, that becomes a little bit more daunting for our engineering team in focusing on their day-to-day job and supporting the team. So I think taking a look at LinkedIn, doing a search in regards to, hey, who heads up, platform engineering at Imply, right? I have a particular skill set that I think will be a great value add to that particular position. So I'm going to send the hiring manager that message, or even reach out to me directly. I get some emails from candidates being like, hey, I'm really interested in this position. And I'm like, fantastic. I'm going to introduce you to the recruiter leading the search so that you can have a phone conversation with them to figure out if it's a mutual match.
Yeah. I think the one thing with this piece is, and this is my recommendation to candidates, is like, just be authentic about it. Right. And don't be afraid to ask a question, right? Can you introduce me to the person, or who runs this group, or can I get some more information, or who's the recruiter handling this role? I think it could be a double-edged sword. I've seen candidates kind of go crazy and they just make a whole bunch of assumptions, and then they write you a message that's like completely off the mark. And then immediately you just disqualify them because you're like, well, this candidate's being very presumptive about things that they don't know anything about, right? So I think it's a double-edged sword, but generally speaking, if you do it with tact, you do it with authenticity, and you do a little bit of curiosity and looking for help, generally people want to help. I think that's like the general thesis. Okay, so this is gonna be the last question. We're just looking towards the future. We've talked a lot about social media from both the company and candidate side. You can choose either, but how do you see social media and its role in recruiting potentially changing or expanding as we move forward? Let's start with Cameron.
Yeah, so it's going to constantly be not only expanding, but changing as well. And I think the only constant is always going to be change. So looking ahead, I think, social media and recruiting is probably looking for some cool changes. I could see, smarter algorithms when it comes to, job suggestions tailored to our skills and interests. It's still not there yet. I think, especially on LinkedIn, when you click the jobs, tab on the top, I think a lot of times there's going to be jobs that have nothing to do with you. It might be a head of HR role when I'm really a head of talent acquisition. I think, really making sure, and then on top of that, when you're doing the search, they give you recommended matches. Those have slowly gotten better, I think, due to the addition of AI. And I think also video and interactive content will likely take the stage, giving more virtual interviews and I think behind the scenes glimpses. But I really do believe AI is going to change the game when it comes to, the hiring process and making it smoother, but also it could introduce bias. You have to be really careful how you utilize it. But I'd say, brace yourself for a more personalized, global and tech savvy recruiting journey ahead.
I would definitely agree with that. I love that. Shreyas, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree there with all of that. And I do think that with the introduction and growth of, AI and recruiting and, all of that is going to like have a really strong impact on, just not only how we look for jobs, how we find jobs, how we hire, with all the different ATSs incorporating all of these features as well. I think that we're going to see a big difference. And I think overall, just like the landscape, even like sales, right? Like how we do sales has changed, right? Like how we recruit is changing, and having like a deeper dialogue that just goes beyond just a job description is going to be important, which is why I think that like teams are also going to invest in, it's not just marketing that's going to be running like branding, right? Like I think there's going to be talent, right? There's going to be talent branding that's going to be sort of in between all of that. That's also going to be sort of merging the two paths. And it's not just going to be like a marketing thing versus I think it's going to be just more widespread across the company.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. And lastly, Megan.
Last but not least, right?
Last but not least.
Employer brand is a foundational pillar to recruiting. That's a majority, I would say 30 to 35% of our hires have been referrals. Your personal brand, your professional brand, they matter. And they matter a lot. It's how you represent yourself, not only in the industry as a subject matter expert, but within the company as a partner to cross-functional entities. So social media is going to play a pretty significant role in the future, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Me as well. Well, we're out of time. Megan, Shreyas, Cameron, thank you so much. This is an amazing episode. Really appreciate all your insights. I'm sure anyone listening to this is going to get a lot, and hopefully some candidates listen to this because there were some really, really great nuggets in here. So thank you all for your time and appreciate you. And until next time, happy hunting.
Thanks.
Thank you.